Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well. 5 reasons we lack modern day essence. The first one is selfish ambition. When someone's gone through trauma and they've been through a lot of hurt and rejection, they can become very selfish and just think, oh, you know what, I'm going to think about myself. And they turn into a hypocrite. They turn into the person that hurt them and they turn selfish. They don't mind exploiting people, they don't mind using people for selfish gain. They just become a selfish person, and Esther was selfless. No matter how much trauma she'd been through, and she from a broken home, she was very selfless. The second one is sabotaging instead of mentoring. You know, um, there's some people that will set you up to fail, and there's so much mentors that instead of empowering you, they humiliate you, they use word curses, they put you down. And the reason we lack modern day Esther is because of so much haters. You know, instead of pouring into people, they tear them down. When it comes to leaders, coaches, mentors, spiritual mothers, mothers and fathers, um, they tear their they tear them down with emotional abuse, even physical abuse. They just tear them down. They tear down their self-esteem. They're emotionally abusive. They're so critical and so mean and horrible. Instead of building them up, they're tearing them down. The third one is the orphan spirit. Being in competition and being jealous and being competitive instead of actually seeing people as as equal and seeing your worth and knowing who you are. Having Because when people have orphan spirit, they have identity issues. They try to be somebody they're not. They try to copy others. They compete. They're in competition. They have the orphan spirit. They have the spirit of rejection, and they're in constant competition. And instead of empowering people, they're trying to compete with them, and they have this orphan spirit, and they're just jealous. They use word curses, and they try to do witchcraft, and they want to set the person up to fail. Um, the fourth one is bitterness. They have the crabs in the barrel mentality. They say, oh, my life was destroyed. I'm gonna destroy your life as well. They have the crabs in the barrel mentality. They're very, very bitter. They're upset of life, and they feel embarrassed or ashamed about the past, and they don't want you to rise up. They want to tear you down with them. They have the mentality that you're going down with me. They don't like their life, and they don't like how things have turned out, so they try to tear you down with them. They're very bitter and they're upset of life, how it turned out, and they're trying to drag you down with them. The fifth one is the victim mindset. They play victim. They act so powerless. Like, oh, I can't. They have the Ahab spirit. They're passive. They don't speak up when it comes to abuse. They don't speak up when it comes to injustice. They just sit there and take it. They're cowards. They're passive, and they just sit there and don't do nothing. They watch witchcraft happen. They watch word curses. They watch public shame in church, humiliation rituals. They sit there and watch, and they're a coward, and they play victim. Like, oh, poor me, I'm going through all this, and they're just so passive and don't do anything about it. They play the victim and they act so powerless, and they don't pray, or they don't really ask God for the good direction. They just try to idolize the leaders and idolize the pastor, and try to be a people pleaser instead of actually putting God first. Hope that helped. If you need any counseling or coaching or prayer requests, email me. Thank you for listening.